Welcome to the Attract Your Ideal Clients podcast. The show is for entrepreneurs who sell their expertise, including trainers, consultants, and coaches looking for real-world, actionable marketing advice to help them identify their competitive strengths, find and fix the marketing bottlenecks that are holding them back, and confidently make the right marketing decisions for their unique business. Today, I'm talking with Carissa Richardson, founder and CEO of Kindred Strategy, about ways you can reach your ideal prospects using YouTube advertising. Before we get started, if you've hit a plateau in your training, consulting, or coaching business, I want to invite you to visit marcusschaller.com/subscribe for weekly troubleshooting guides and tips to help you find and fix the weak spots in your marketing that are holding you back, fine-tune your positioning and marketing strategy, and start growing again by attracting more of your ideal clients. Again, that's marcusschaller.com/subscribe. Okay, we're back. And what I jokingly call now Carissa's Corner, although I think I'm going to officially brand it. But this is actually our third episode together that we've done in the last few weeks. And you've been so kind and generous with your time. We've been talking about specifically using pay-per-click advertising for trainers, for clients, or for coaches, for consultants who are trying to essentially reach their ideal clients through pay-per-click. And a lot of people in that expertise space, right? They're consultants, they're coaches, they're trainers. They're not necessarily digital marketers, right? So while all of us have seen Google ads, all of us have seen ads on LinkedIn. If we're on LinkedIn, whatever we're doing, we've seen them. But I would guess that not that many people that are entrepreneurs that sell expertise are necessarily proficient at it or understand how they can actually use it. And that there's some real usefulness there, specifically because they have such narrow ideal client types themselves, right? And a lot of it tends to be business to business. So we're going to continue chatting about that. And specifically today, we're going to talk about YouTube, right? Because YouTube, last week we talked about Google ads, YouTube being owned by Google. There's a lot of overlap, right? And so anybody that's learning how to use Google ads is going to, by default, have some leg up on being able to start doing YouTube. But just to start us out, high level, can you kind of just describe how YouTube advertising generally works, how it relates to Google ads? Just give us kind of the high level view.
Yeah. So YouTube ads, obviously you have to have video content. So that's kind of the number one thing that either qualifies or disqualifies a lot of my clients from even being able to try it. But the cool thing about it is the setup is somewhat similar to any Google type of ad where you have your budget, your flight dates. But when you get into the targeting, you have your typical, like if you're running display ads, let's say on Google, you have your typical audiences you can pick from some demographic information, employment information, household information. There's even like work in like industries people work in. It's pretty high level. There's not a lot of like nitty gritty targeting on Google, but you can at least layer in some high level targeting. But then the other cool thing about YouTube that I really like is you can target based on the content of the videos people are watching. So I think a big part of paid ads, and I don't think I'm alone in this, in marketing in general, probably, is the mindset that the person's in when you reach them. And the efficiency of that message is going to be so much higher if they're in a mindset where they're thinking, could be considering something like your product. So I think especially in like a consulting space, like reaching somebody when they're either in a professional mindset or an education type mindset where they're trying to learn something could be really beneficial to coaches, especially.
This is what I think why YouTube, of all the different types of options that you and I have discussed and might discuss in the future as far as using pay-per-click, why I think YouTube is really the top of the list, at least for me. Because you just mentioned when we're talking about people that sell expertise, again, trainers, consultants, coaches, what is the most, I don't want to say just common, but one of the best ways to market themselves is through content, through expertise, through thought leadership, right? And video being for years now, every year you see about video is king. It's like it's been that every year, right? For 10 years.
Yeah.
But the ability to record now, it's ridiculous, right? How easy it is technically to record yourself. And you could do anything with video at this point. You can go as as high-end professional as you want to. You can have, professional production. You can have it where you're in this beautiful studio and you have people recording you. But you can also do it where you're speaking into like what we're doing now. You could do podcasts, obviously, where this is going to be video. So there's so many different ways to do it. But ultimately, it's a way for you to get your thought leadership and your expertise out there to the right people. And to your point, one of the things that really sets it apart is if somebody's going on a video and they're going to watch, let's say, a video that's very relevant to what you do, and you can have an ad that's delivered prior to them watching the video, and you can create a good video ad. I mean, just think about the possibilities of that, right? Think about how many niche videos and channels there are out there. And if you can think about even 15 high volume videos that exist that your ideal clients are watching on, there's enough like, quantity of views.
Mhm.
I mean, just the possibilities of that are staggering.
Yeah, definitely. And it gives you the way that their ads function give you a lot of flexibility too. So I mean, I've seen, and I'm sure if you watch a lot of YouTube, you've seen there's like the shorter 15 to 30-second ads. And if it's over 15 seconds, you can actually do a non-skippable ad. If it's less than 15 seconds, it can be purchased as non-skippable. Anything over 15 seconds will be skippable. But the nice thing with YouTube is that they have to watch, you only pay per view. So they have to watch at least 15 seconds before you're charged. So I'm sure everybody's familiar with the after 5 seconds, you can skip this video button. The nice thing is that if somebody clicks that, you don't pay for it. So you're only going to pay if they watch past that mark. But I always tell people, I said, try to make sure your logo, your website, all that stuff is included in the first 5 seconds because that's free impressions. If somebody skips, but they still saw your brand name, that's still brand awareness for you. And then if you want to, the nice thing about YouTube as well, versus maybe like LinkedIn or something like that, you can post longer form ads. So you could have a 5-minute video. And somebody might, I mean, chances are the average amount of time people watch a video is about 6 seconds. And you can actually see, I think if you run YouTube ads, you can look at analytics and it'll show you a view curve of where people start viewing, where they fall off. And you can just see as soon as the 6-second mark hits, it just drops. It's amazing. So I think that that's good just to keep in mind. But if you do get somebody hooked, I mean, you could put a 5-minute video up there and they could end up watching the whole thing. So I think it's just important to know, like, if you want to put a ton of content on there and have a really long video, great. But just know that the meat of your branding and the key like call to action should be, it's kind of the opposite of what you would typically do in putting the call to action at the end. You almost want to put the call to action at the beginning too, just so those people that don't stick around and only watch the first 6 seconds still come out with that key call to action.
Yeah, and that first 6 seconds of whether they watch the first 15 and whether you're charged for it, and also including that, or including with that, the nature of online viewers, right? Like, again, we can think about, we've been there, we click through things. If it's not instantly getting our attention, we click past it. That's just the reality, right? We're not, when I was growing up, we had to watch the commercials. We don't have to watch the commercials anymore. And I think now, not to get too into the creative aspect of it, I do want to mention one thing as far as mindset. I'm going to give you my opinion about it. I'd love to hear your opinion about it. Is when people think of ads, they think it's easy to think of commercials. And when people think of commercials, it's easy to think of the worst commercials, right? So it was like, oh, so a commercial would be like, hi, I'm Bob from Bob's Consulting. And, I like it. I'm proud to say that I've been in business for 25 years and I'm, passionate about what blah, 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 right? Bob's going to get clicked. Like, dude, Bob's going nowhere. Nobody cares, right? And they shouldn't, because they're trying to watch another video, right? What they do care about is their problem, the challenges they're facing, their perspective on it. So again, just thought experiment. And again, I'm going to hand it to you. I want to hear your opinion. Imagine you're people listening at home or wherever you are, you're watching YouTube, an ad comes up. Think about a problem you're dealing with right now that really matters to you, right? I won't be cheesy and say like the thing that keeps you up at night, but the thing that keeps you up at night, right? Imagine that you're watching an ad and somebody's talking specifically about that problem. They're starting out with that frame. Are you going to watch more of that? Probably, right? Versus if they start about themselves. So I wanted to kind of throw that out there before we get too into the technical side of how to actually create these, because I think that framing what is a good ad in general is really important for people to picture, so that they're not going into it with these assumptions that when they're putting out these ads, it's these very like me focused, kind of cheesy cable TV type ads that we see, right? So anyway, that's my spiel. I'm going to shut up and let you tell me where I'm right, where I'm wrong, where I'm completely off the track, or whether you agree with me 100% because it's brilliant.
No, I think that what you're saying, and I think to build off what you're saying, like it's that authenticity. It's not seeming like it's super scripted or it's really salesy or like cheesy. I think coming off as an authentic, like I really want to help you, especially as a coach. I think half the time it's not even what you say in the video, it's if the person feels like they're connected to you. So I mean, yes, there is some level of credibility of like I do have the experience to help you solve X problem, but also like through video you can really get a feel for would I get along with this person, would I want to talk to this person once a week, like, or whatever. And coaching sometimes has a higher price tag, so it's like, do I trust this person that I'm going to get the value back out of what I'm paying, because sometimes it can be expensive. So I think video can do all that so much more efficiently and quickly than any type of image ad or text ad or anything else. That's why I think video, especially for coaching, I've worked with a few coaches and I think video is great. I mean, honestly, I've had coaches on social media that just like are in their car and they are recording a video of themselves, and on maybe not on YouTube, that doesn't play as well because you want your ad to fit and feel endemic to whatever platform you're on. So social, that plays better because that is kind of, it seems like a good fit. But I think just being yourself and being authentic too, on top of showing your expertise and your credibility, is almost like the other side of the coin that you really, because I think that is also equally as important in what gonna get somebody to click and even schedule like an introduction call with you, because they're gonna already feel like they know you a little bit from just watching a video.
Yeah, I've only recently started adding some video that's not podcast related, right? So I've been doing the podcast for a while, but I've just started now adding some me having this conversation with the website visitor, right? And partly, and people again listening, and you yourself as a professional that works with people to help them with this, maybe you can relate to this. One of the challenges for me was, some people, a lot of people feel like they don't hear like the sound of their own voice, right? So they hear their own voice. I've gotten over that, but when I'm not like, oh, like the video, I'm like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Like, there's certain kind of like, oh, I don't, whatever, right? And do I really want to put myself out there on video? Is that my strength?
Yeah.
And the other part of it too was, I I had a hard time figuring out how to not make it feel too scripted, right? So a while back when I tried to create videos, it's one thing if you and I are talking right now, it's just talking, right? I'm not reading anything, right? If I do like a video ad that I've tried to do in the past, because I'm a copywriter by trade, right? Before like I'm gonna write every word out, and so I'm reading it like, but and you look at the picture, like you look at me on it, I'm like staring at the screen, like
Yeah, you can see your
it's
eyes moving, reading.
totally, or just my eyes are like I'm just staring right at you, the viewer, like it's terrible. So I actually just last week, and partly because of our conversations, it's inspired me honestly to really start playing around with this again because YouTube ads are something I want to start doing more of. And what I did was I just created, it's just a script. And, even for a podcast that I'm doing solo, this is the first time I've ever done a podcast or solo podcast without reading it, because it's always been audio. So it didn't really matter, but I wanted to have the video. So long story short, using an outline, but just riffing off the outline. And it went really well. Now I created I think it was like a 2-minute ad or a 1.5 minute long ad about a week ago. And that was a little bit more reading, but I feel like I pulled it off, right?
Yeah.
Bringing all that stuff up. But when people think about creating an ad, right? It's one thing if, oh, it's pretty easy to put it up there and you can figure out the demographics and the targeting. What's your advice for people that are like, hey, I don't even know what to do. I don't even know. Do I record myself? Any guidance on that?
Yeah. I mean, I am working right now with a company to create some video ads for my own business. And there I will just say, like, getting an expert involved that knows how to coach you through it is really helpful if you can't afford something like that. And if you want me to, we can drop the name of that company in the notes or something later, because she's wonderful. And she's really good at coaching and kind of getting a natural like feel out of you. And I tell my clients to do video and I don't do it for myself. So the other thing I'll say is I've realized recently, I was talking to my assistant, because we've been trying to put more video on social. And what I've been doing is taking Zoom conversations I'm having with people or presentations I'm doing via Zoom and getting the recordings and having her clip parts of that out to use on social, because I am so much more conversational and natural and normal sounding when I'm having a conversation with somebody or presenting something, versus me being like, all right, I'm going to record a reel for social media next week. And then I seem like very robotic and very stiff and nervous. So I think that even if, and this was actually a tip, I don't know if the company I work with gave it to me or somebody else, but a tip was, well, then just have somebody, like have my assistant sit behind the camera and just interview me, like read me questions and have me answer the questions. And so it feels like we're having a conversation, and then take that and edit it down into a 30-second ad. So if that makes, I know for me that helps. And I am, like I said, by no expert, by no means an expert on video, but I do think that interview style feels more natural. So I think it's just finding what feels natural and what makes you come across as more of your authentic self. And whatever that, I mean, the thing about video that's great is you can always throw away stuff you don't like. You can keep the stuff you do like, you can piece it together. Canva is amazing. You can use Canva. I'm a very novice video person, but I can piece enough together in Canva to make it look good, put some music behind it, your logo over top, it's good to go. So find what works for you. And if you don't like it, don't put it out there. I mean, you want to make sure what you're putting out is professional and feels good to you, because you want to connect with your audience in a way that is going to feel like you. So just making sure you find that way to get the video of you that's in a natural, comfortable way.
I love the interview thing. I thought about that myself. I don't have an assistant to help me with that. But I thought about like even asking myself questions and talking to myself, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, yeah, it's going to feel more natural. You got to forget the camera's even there. Rick Rubin, who I don't know if you've ever listened to his podcast, he's a music producer extraordinaire, all that good stuff. But he was telling, I think he was on Lex Friedman's podcast, I think. And he's talking about like even, it'd be great if you couldn't even see the cameras. As I guess there's cameras everywhere. And it makes you so much more self-aware, right? So it's almost like to whatever degree, it's like if you can make them so you can't see them because you can just be in a conversation. Kind of want to emulate that, right? And if you think about how that relates again to trainers, coaches, consultants, people that are like, hopefully, if you're doing this professionally, you're comfortable in front of one-on-one client. If you're doing groups, you're comfortable in front of speaking in front of a group. But it's funny how if we get on camera, all of a sudden we're like, now if that comfort level, if that, we ooze this aura, right? And if that's all locked up, that's not what you want to put out there. So whatever you can do to just make make it very natural. And maybe it's just practice, right? It's like if you've done 300 coaching sessions over the course of your career so far, and it's going to come very natural. But if you've never shot video of yourself and you think you're going to nail it on the first try, you might be putting too much pressure, right?
Right. Well, and expecting yourself to get it in one take, like putting the pressure on this has to be perfect, the whole thing from front to end, understanding that you can record it, you can stop, you can record that part over, and then it's very easy to plop that into a system and edit it down so it seems, and put in transitions if there's this place that's choppy because you cut it off. Like there's just so many ways you can edit video now, and you don't have to be like an expert like Adobe user to be able to do it. There's systems that are much easier.
But I have to say, as an Adobe user, if you ever want to play in the Adobe playground, it is
It is
fun.
amazing.
Yes, it is so great. I use Adobe Premiere Pro for years,
Mhm.
Illustrator. I love that stuff, but it's hey, that's me. So
Yeah. For the
let
novice, sometimes Canva seems a little more drag and drop easy, but I
whatever,
agree.
yeah, whatever
iMovie.
works, whatever works, right? But you
Yeah.
find it's not really even that it has to be technically this very difficult or very advanced thing. It's more about it's like any other tool, right? You get comfortable with it, and then as you get comfortable with the tool, you're able to be more creative. And what's
Mhm.
so fun about videos is that it's infinite creativity, right? I mean, combination of who's speaking on the video, other things, topics, graphics, whatever you want to do, you can create a lot of different things with it. Um, so let's zoom in a little bit, not too far, not too technical yet, but let's zoom in a little bit and go, okay, let's think about playbooks, right? So ways that trainers, consultants, coaches can actually use YouTube ads to reach. They have an ideal client type, they have a target audience, they have specific content they'd love to get out there. Maybe it's an ad where it's talking about their coaching or consulting. Maybe it's they want to get specific content out in front of the right people. Maybe they have a podcast that they do video for, whatever it is, right? But let's talk about some maybe use cases. Like, I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but just ways. It's not going to cover every way you could use it, but some common ways. And I'll start out. I kind of mentioned it earlier. If you have a minute long kind of you know, here's the challenge, here's how I can help you solve it, come to the workshop, come to my webinar, whatever it is. It could be any call to action you want. And, you're thinking about my ideal client, my audience is definitely going to watch these particular videos that I've seen on YouTube. There's YouTube videos that are, by influencers or whatever. They have lots of reach. A lot of people are watching those every day. And if you could get your video in front of those when people click on to watch that video and they're seeing you right up front, now you're just getting direct access to people potentially that are very, very targeted. So that's just one approach to it. Can you share maybe some other, just on a broad level, other kind of ways that they could structure these ads or structure these campaigns to put themselves in front of their ideal clients?
Yeah. So another way, I would think the other main common way would be to like for B2B especially, or I mean B2C it works as well, but in this case it most likely is probably going to be B2B, is looking at targeting. Well, I guess there's two ways. One would be looking at targeting by industry. So if you have a very niche industry focus, which I think a lot of coaches have some sort of focus, so it's the education industry or just business professionals. So there's different kind of industries and occupations you can target by. So that would be more versus targeting content, that would be targeting the person, the right type of person. There's also a way with Google to upload a customer match list. So if you have a pretty robust email list or customer slash email list, and those people are a pretty good representation of who you want your client to be, you can actually export that and upload it into Google, and Google will match those people up with Google users, and then it won't necessarily retarget. I mean, you can have it retarget them, but you most likely don't want to. But what is really valuable is it will find people that look like them. So people on Google that have similar browsing behavior, search behavior, things like that. So I would say it's target kind of three main ways people structure is targeting by the content that somebody's watching, the type of person who's watching, like who that person is, or by using like kind of first party data, like a customer list or something like that to build like a lookalike audience with.
And I know one aspect of, or one way to reach I don't know if it's an audience in this case, but there is a YouTube component to search. I'm kind of messing that up how I'm asking, but basically, technically, if somebody goes on Google and they type in, leadership consultant in Minneapolis for SaaS companies, whatever, right?
Mhm.
And that's part of your niche, right? That you can create a campaign in YouTube that's connected to ads, to Google Ads, that basically is also by search phrase, search terms, things like that. Can you tell me a little bit more about it, how that works, how it's maybe a little different than Google Ads with text, a little bit, because I've played around with it in the past, and it seems like you got to be really very good at the keyword phrases, because if nobody's really searching for it, it's nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's going to be, people are searching YouTube a little differently than they're searching on Google. They're being a little more, it might be a little more broad or like not quite as specific. So I think if you do use keyword targeting on YouTube, you can use kind of like the the main keywords. And if you're running a search campaign, it might even be like looking at what your top 10 performing keywords are on your paid search campaign, and then using those to target on YouTube. Like on paid search, I typically will have like 20 to 25 keywords. So, but YouTube, I don't even think you can. I think you can only have about 10 like seed keywords that you can put in there to really focus on. So I would just make them kind of the most relevant, most commonly searched terms, just so that you can make sure you're not getting too specific, because then you're not going to get as many impressions and not as many people searching that.
Yeah, and to your point, people going on YouTube, every channel is different, as you mentioned
Mhm.
earlier, and the way people use it. Somebody's going on YouTube, they're not necessarily like typing in like they are a Google Ads search where they're looking for a website. They're looking for a resource. With the YouTube, maybe I call it the YouTube, like my in-laws call it the YouTube, right? But if if they're going on there, maybe they're looking for certain channels or topics or something like that. But it's just good to remember that there's lots of different ways to basically approach it, where it can be beyond just whether they're watching a particular video. One thing I also did want to mention, I forgot to mention earlier when we were talking about types of ads and the style of it and whether it's authentic, my smart TV down in the living room is, connected to my Google account, right? So I'll see in the, alongside other shows I've been watching, there'll be like whatever's trending on YouTube or what it thinks I want to watch. And for people listening at home, if you haven't heard of Mr. Beast, I'm sure you've seen Mr. Beast. The reason I'm bringing that up is YouTube, there's this kind of creator economy, and we could call it a cult if you want, but basically this idea of how do we beat the algorithm, right? How do we create videos that do exactly what Google's algorithm wanted to do? And Mr. Beast has been around for years, but basically he's somebody who goes around, does, crazy stunts and things and gives away money and does all this stuff that people want to watch. But if you look at the title, like if you look at the, like, is it called like a title card or whatever it is,
Mhm.
graphic at the beginning of the thumbnail, if it will,
Mhm.
uh, it's all like really cheesy, right? It's like somebody like, and you see so many people copying that, right? So my favorite is like somebody they've got like a stack of money and they're like looking at the stack
Yeah.
of money like they're surprised by the stack of money or something. And hey, do whatever you want. But in this case, I just want to throw up like kind of a warning, a PSA for people. Don't necessarily look at what's trending and go, that must be the right way
Yeah.
to put myself out there, because I mean, maybe that is the way, right? If you do coaching on how to make bundles of money and you want to have so I just want to throw that out there and just get your thoughts, because you're smiling about it. I don't know if you have any personal experience with those kinds of videos and people coming to you and be like, hey, I've just got this video of me like being really shocked that the gold bar is in front of me.
Ugh, I just know my kids watch all of that. And so I get those thumbnails and I'm like, this looks ridiculous. I would never click to watch this. But no, and I think looking at people, I mean, sometimes looking at other people in your industry. So, I mean, whatever search term you might use, it could be a good exercise. So whatever search term you might use for yourself, for if you were to run YouTube ad, go onto YouTube and search that and see what pops up and look what thumbnails they're using, what headlines they're using, kind of what they're doing. And then there'll be different approaches. Like there will be the cheesy ones, but then there'll also be more professional ones, and kind of see what fits your personality and feels authentic to you, and then maybe kind of copycat that. But there's definitely coaches out there that are posting content. So it's kind of just going and doing a little research too, and just seeing what other people are doing. And there should be enough examples where you can kind of find where you think you might fit in that spectrum.
Yeah, and to expand on the PSA, don't necessarily go the opposite direction either, right? We've all
Yeah.
seen very dry consulting content, training content, coaching content. You want it still to have some humanity to it. If you're putting out a video that basically looks like a white paper from the 90s, you might not get it. Might be very serious and have a lot of value, but people aren't necessarily going to consume it. So just, use your best judgment and trust your gut, trust your own sense of style and aesthetics, because ultimately you are trying to connect with people that are going to be hopefully a good fit for you. And if you're doing it like this kind of fake in either direction, where you're either fake totally too corporate, or you're fake, like, trying to be Mr. Beast, and do stunts with cars and stuff like that, it's not going to necessarily work. As we start to close out, I want to ask, I mentioned earlier, we talked about people could put an ad or a clip where it's served with an existing video that already has an audience, right? And that video is reaching an audience that you want to reach. In the past, when I've tried to figure out how to find the best videos to really kind of piggyback onto, which is essentially what you're doing, I found that when I'd go through on YouTube's homepage and look for specific channels, I had trouble, at least I probably was doing it the wrong way, but I had trouble finding good viable options, right? And my recent thought was, oh, don't do that. Don't go on YouTube's homepage. Start Googling search terms as if I was that audience and see what videos pop up, and kind of take it more from like a Google approach in, rather than looking for like what YouTube tells you the channels are. And especially when you go on when you're building a campaign, you can actually type in, I think, certain types of topics, and it will give you suggestions. I just found it to be kind of like not the great matches. What are your recommendations with that to find like the best videos or channels for your content?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I'm setting up campaigns, I sort of let Google's computers do the work. So I will go in and just say, and pick a content theme. So when you're going into the setup part of Google, you can say, do you want to target by content? Yes. And it will say, do you want to target people, news and politics? Do you want to target entertainment, fitness? And you can just pick a category. So I will, and then I think you also can layer on specific channels if you really have like that identified. So I would say if you're not sure, you might just want to start with, I want to target business professionals who are looking at educate like content, like professional development content. I don't know if that's exactly a category they offer, but something like that. And starting there. And then when you get into your analytics later, as you run, you can actually see go to placement and see what channels your ads are running on. And you can look at performance. So then you can kind of see, oh, these channels like are really performing well for me. I'm getting a lot of clicks. I'm getting a higher video completion rate. Like people are watching my video for longer, and then maybe optimize by going and adding those in. But I always think starting broader and then narrowing it in based on your actual results is better, because what Google will do is it will find people that fit your requirements of that broader target. And then it'll start to realize who's engaging with your ad, who's not. And then it's going to go find more people like that to get better performance for you. So it's sometimes better to just let the computer figure it out and then kind of optimize from there.
Yeah, that's a great point as far as starting broader. In general, I'm always a big proponent of niche, right? Of being very targeted. In the beginning, when you're trying things, you're in the experimental stage. What we're talking about right now is the experimental stage, right? You're placing bets and you're not sure where the best places to have your video are. So yes, it makes total sense to say, okay, let's a little bit throw some spaghetti at the wall and maybe we're going to get some clues as to what's sticking. It's not a great long-term strategy, right? You don't want to just be like, oh, I'm gonna for the rest of time, I'm just gonna basically serve my ad and pay to serve my ad toward business, like that might be too broad. But in addition to that too, like it also brings up why it's so important to do some very serious thinking about your ideal client type and your ideal audience. Because again, thinking about most of the people listening are going to be in the B2B space. There's a lot of
Mhm.
coaches that aren't, but it's still like, if you're thinking about consulting, that's B2B. If you think about training, for the most part, that's going to be you're going into corporations or larger businesses sometimes, even small businesses. A lot of coaching now is B2B. It's related to sales, marketing, all that stuff. Um, if you are really clear about who your ideal client is and your ideal audience, and maybe you have a couple of them, then things like what industry associations do they follow? What events do they go to? What kind of conferences do they go to? What kind of YouTube channels? Who's the influencers? Who's on LinkedIn that probably also has a YouTube? But then you have a much better idea of if you could try both, right? So you could say, okay, let's do the broad approach to test and see what's sticking. There might be properties out there you never even realized exist. And then you have and here is kind of like, these are the places we know that these clients go. So you can start with a couple of different campaigns, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, ideally, if you're going to do ads, it's always good to start with a couple different videos. And maybe it's about if you have like the top 3 problems your clients usually come to you with. Maybe you develop a video for each of those problems. And then maybe there's like a general brand video, and run them side by side and see what does better and just learn from that. So I always recommend multiple ads. The other thing to keep in mind with YouTube ads, this is a big one that like a lot of people is don't understand just because it's not the way other ad platforms work, is that when you're creating your ad on YouTube, you actually need to use a link to an actual video that's already lives on YouTube. So make sure your video is actually uploaded to YouTube. Most ad platforms, you just upload your video to the ad platform. YouTube's a little different where they want it to actually live on YouTube. So that's just something to keep in mind too, as you're setting it up. You will need to have a YouTube page. Now, it doesn't need to be like a public page. It doesn't need to be somewhere you send people, but it just a page where your videos can live.
Yeah, if you have a Google account, even a personal Google account, for the most part, you'll have a YouTube channel that you can create for that. And then you can create um, videos, whether they're ads or not, and you can just make them not private, but you could basically just put where they'd have to put in the link,
Yeah.
and they're not necessarily, like I do this with my own YouTube channel. If I do an ad, I'm not going to have that go out to the subscribers because, they could, but it'd be kind of weird, right? So you could just have it where somebody would have to click on it. But yeah, it's so just to wrap us up, like it's a lot of stuff we covered, right? Somebody listening could be like, I just now, okay, I'm gonna cold call instead, right? Um, what would be not the whole kind of process, but just to start out, like if they were just gonna dip their toe in the water and they need to do one thing just to start getting familiar with it or just kind of like rip off the band-aid. I'm using all different sorts of metaphors that don't mix, but what would be the first step that you might recommend that they do?
Yeah, I mean, once you have your video, I think just going in and playing around with it, setting a campaign up, it can be really simple. It can be just $5 or $10 a day. You don't have to spend a fortune on it, and just maybe just pick either the type of person you want to target or the type of content you want to target and just let it go and see how it does. And because I usually think once you get in there and start doing it, it's not as complicated as it sounds. Google makes it pretty straightforward. So yeah, I think it's just kind of getting in there and trying it. Honestly, getting the video will be like the hardest part. In my experience with clients, getting the video will be your hardest part because nobody wants to do it. But once you have your video, if you go in there, that will be the easy part, setting the ads up.
Special thanks to Carissa Richardson for sharing her insights about reaching your ideal prospects using YouTube advertising. If you enjoyed the show, I hope you'll consider subscribing and leaving a review. And don't forget to visit marcusschaller.com/subscribe for weekly troubleshooting guides and tips to help you find and fix the weak spots in your marketing that are holding you back, fine-tune your positioning and marketing strategy, and start growing again by attracting more of your ideal clients. Again, that's marcusschaller.com/subscribe.